Greetings, welcome back to CS195 Web Development. We're on week 6, CS Layouts Part 1. We're doing floating elements. So last lesson we learned about positioning and how we could actually put the items where we want them as opposed to just kind of spreading them out or changing the width and height. So what does fixed positioning do? All right, what does fixed positioning do? Our objective for this lesson is to understand floating elements. Again, this does actually allow elements to move around on the page, which is useful. So our success criteria is demonstrating adding a CS rule that floats an element and uses the proper with if text. And again, we'll get into what that means. You're going to be able to use the float rule, and we'll understand the two key principles of float, kind of how it works, and then if you use text, how to use it with text. I don't use float a lot, but it is good to use float to wrap text around an image. So if you want to get that wrap look like you would maybe in a Microsoft document or a Google document, then you can use the wrap. You can use it with text. It's not recommended, and you do need to do an extra step for that. So we're going to watch the con video real quick. We'll see the basic concept of how it works. We won't spend too much time on it. Again, I don't use float all that much. There's better ways to do most of the stuff you're going to do with it. One of the key things, though, is if you want to wrap text around an image, great. Float's great for that. And if for whatever reason you want to do the other thing, we'll understand that one key concept on how. So we're two big things to understand how to do it around an image. And then if you choose not to, what do you need to know?
I'm laying out a web page for Hopper, one of our avatars here on Khan Academy. It's got an image, some cool links, and a paragraph. I think that this picture of Hopper would look better next to the paragraph, so I'm going to cut and paste it down here. Okay, that doesn't look as good as I hoped it would. The text starts at the bottom of the image. I was hoping that the text would wrap around the image, like in newspapers and magazines. We'll need a new CSS property for that, float. It's a way of floating elements in and around other elements, and it's perfect for wrapping text around images. So we go up to our pick rule and say float, and then for the value, we need to decide if we want the picture to float to the left-hand side or the right-hand side. Let's try left. Great. Perfect. Well, okay, not quite perfect, because the text is really close to the image. Do you remember what property we should use to separate the text from the image?
So go ahead and think about that real quick. But do notice this is pretty much it, right? If you add float, all the text below it will kind of wrap around it. Also, useless fact of the day, this is where debugging come from. If you actually took the time to read this gal named Grace Harper actually pulled a bug, a real bug, out of a computer. So debugging comes from a real actual bug. Anyway, again, float is everything below it floats around it. The only other thing is if you, and we're not going to spend too much more time on this, I wanted to show you this, and I'll talk about the other one. If you choose to do text, like she's going to float this off to the side, if you choose to do text, you need to give it a width. All right, pictures by default already have a width, so that's why you don't need to give it to a picture necessarily. I mean, she did, but if the picture was already defaulted to 100 pixels, that was the size of it. But you need, otherwise, it's going to, yeah, you're going to float stuff to the side of it, but it already takes up the whole space, so there's no room to float. So if you shrink it, say like 30% in this case, then you can move it. So you have to give it width. Otherwise, the only other piece that's useful is if everything starts floating after it, you can stop it with a clear command, a clear both. So like if this one starts wrapping and you don't want it to start wrapping, you can click clear and it'll stop trying to wrap it around it. So again, we're not going to spend too much time on float. If you want to do more research, watch the rest of this video by all means. Just want to kind of show you how this works. Because again, using it for images is kind of what a lot of people use it for. And as we get into the advanced layouts, we'll see better ways to move text around than this. So again, we'll full screen this. We'll make it so you can actually see it. And then we'll try to float stuff around. So again, we added an image this time, and it's still all inside of this. So that's why we have the nice big red background of everything. So we're going to be able to see how to move stuff around. So I guess the first thing is first, let's give this image an ID. So ID equals star. So attribute equals quote star. Let's go ahead and do hashtag star. Squiggly bracket enter float. And we'll just go ahead and float it left. It's already on that side, so float left. And notice everything. Again, this is why float does weird things. Notice how the red is no longer around the whole entire thing. Everything went off to this side. So what I was talking about the clear is, what if we only wanted the blue to wrap around it? So let's go ahead and find the the green, which is 2. So let's add this clear both. And there you go. So this makes it so, remember, everything under the star is going to wrap. It's going to go up and try to wrap around it. By adding clear to this one, it no longer wraps and it goes back to its normal position. So that's kind of the gist of how float works. Again, if you wanted to do that in this case, I don't have a lot of extra text, so clear doesn't it works fine to have everything up here. But if you had a whole bunch of other text, it may or may not look weird. The bottom line is this produces weird results. Make sure you understand how to use it. Like maybe having, in this case again, it's already inside of a div, so float a little bit of it and then change it. So that's the gist of float. We'll go ahead and come back down here, do the practice and the challenge and the question, and then you're good to go. We'll see you next lesson.